I think you're all aware that we managed to raise the funds to buy Holy Rood House and the land. It's purchased, and we've become custodians of Holy Rood House, the building, and all the land. See, we're custodians. It means that we're here to protect and guard this precious gift. We're not stewards. There's a lot of talk back in the perhaps 80s and 90s, I've spoken on it before, about being stewards or even being co-creators with God, the Creator. I'm not sure that that's where we are today. We understand ecology differently, and we have to model something a bit different in our theology at Holy Rood House. So we're custodians. And by protecting, or seeking to protect and guard this precious treasure, we will need to listen to the earth, listen to what she is saying to us. But of course, she's been saying a lot of things recently. We're in the middle of a pandemic. It won't be the first, won't be the last. And climate change has been around, of course, all my life. But it's up here now, at the door, and we're even having, great big summits and so on to look at it and coming away wanting. What I hope we might sort of catch today is that mutuality is absolutely key. Now, we have a theology of mutuality at Holy Rood House. I know we slip up and we can fall into it very easily, but we seek not to have them and us. We're all wounded healers, each one, everyone who comes across the threshold, we are all wounded, and we're a wounded community, welcoming wounded people, but we're also a flourishing community, welcoming people to enable flourishing within them also. So we have a rich resource, every single one of you, and also the earth. The earth isn't separate from the community, it is the community, it's just as much part of the community as you and I. And that's a wonderful thing. So what on earth are we up to now? Any of you who know Catherine Keller's theology, I don't know, some of you might do. Well, Catherine Keller is someone that, well, she inspired me some years ago, and those of you who've heard me have conversations about becoming and belonging and the I ams and all that, I think Catherine Keller helped me to grasp some of that. So when her book, Political Theology of the Earth, came out, I ordered a copy straight away. And our planetary emergency and the struggle for a new public. Now, I'm not suggesting at all that I understand it. It's really hard. I struggle my way through. It really needs to be, for academics, somewhere there, which I'm not, but I work away at it, and I have to say, once I get some time to look at it, I can't put it down. It urges me on, and I think, I don't quite understand what you're saying there, but I go to the next page, and then I go back, and it's a really wonderful book, and it's helped me to think about this summer school. So I've called this Digging Deeply. We're going to, I hope, together dig deeply with Catherine Keller into the Kairos time for Holy Rood House. Now, the word Kairos is an ancient Greek word, and it means like, this is the moment, the opportune time, this is the right time, this is the season of opportunity. Now, we're always saying that at Holy Rood House, it's not like it's new, but it has to be new again. This is the moment we become custodians of a wonderful piece of land, so creative, that speaks to us and brings us healing, and a wonderful house that has a particular kind of energy in it, which is kind of ordinary but extraordinary, that holds us safe. So the Kairos time, and I've put there that wonderful verse from the scriptures, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So for me, and I think probably for each of you, I could tell when some of you came back over the threshold the first time for a long time, that your heart's at Holyrood House. And it's in other places too. Our hearts are always bigger than we think, so we can have a bit of heart somewhere and so on. But we have a treasure. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So the broken heart that we all carry within us in different ways is part of that heart. And that's where the treasure and the heart, they go together. So the Kairos time, that is a natural flow, a movement forward. So the movement forward is never linear at Holyrood House. When we work with our guests and with one another to support our spiritual and therapeutic needs, we're never going in a straight line. We're not on our way to heaven. We are on a journey that moves, it's nomadic, a little bit from here, a little bit from there, a bit from Holyrood House, a bit from another community. We do this. We're on a nomadic journey, and I think the Kairos time is to go on that nomadic journey, or to continue it, if we're already on it, which I'm sure we all are. There's something about continuity and progression. We're going forward towards our vocation to be a healing community. We are a healing community, and we all need to be healed. As I say, there's no such thing as them and us at Holyrood House, and it is a vocation. Those of us who live and work and come and help in different ways, we know what it is to embody a vocation. But I guess, if we were to talk to each other, all of us here, I guess Holyrood House is vocational for you as well. It's like a calling. It's almost like it's deep within, it's embodied within us, it's vocational. And this movement is our theology, the naming of what is a mystery within which we are held. We are held. It's our Christic energy, our Christ heart. We spring from our Christology at Holyrood House. It's our mission, our dance. We've been thinking about Trinity recently at Holyrood House, and some of you, those of you who do go to church, will have touched in on Trinity Sunday. It's our dance. It's not our dance with three separate persons of the Godhead. It's our dance with the environment, which is, as Sally McFaig speaks about, the earth is the very body of God. So it's not split up. We've been custodians, become custodians of this. So we use ecological language, grounded. How often do we say, somebody says, what's Holyrood? Are you Christian? And I tend to say, I don't know. It's a loaded question, isn't it? Very off-putting to people. So I say, yes, we have a gentle Christian ethos. We're very grounded. I tend to say quickly, we're very grounded. We're rooted, we're budding, we're growing, we're blossoming. And with all the pruning, the sweat and the struggle of care, protecting and guarding, this is our healing vocation for our guests, for each of us here, and for the earth, of which we are now custodians, but also the wider earth, of course, and indeed the cosmos, not just the earth itself. So we can't continue this mission without entering into an understanding of gratitude. We are deeply grateful to one another, all who have helped enable us to come to this point. And for me, gratitude and grace go together. I love the word grace. This is our starting point, gratitude and grace. I find myself often saying at Holyrood House, look, it's all grace. So we can drop egos and worrying about whether we're any good or, all that stuff. It's grace. We are held in a community of grace. And we work a lot at Holyrood House, I think, with ideas of grace and law. We get a bit caught up in that. It's a tension. And there are things, if you run a charity, that in a sense comes under law, but we try to make that a place of grace. And often, if I'm perhaps sitting with someone exploring a bit of a struggle, and they don't know which way to go. And I sometimes say, well, maybe there's two paths, have a look. If one path you think, actually, I think that's law, and the other's grace, always go with grace, even if it's a risk. Never go, always with grace, and somehow you'll get to the right place. Always grace. But of course, the law side of a charity is very, very important, and that has to be, if you like, graciously understood. And that's a very important part of this transitional time. So a little bit more about gratitude. Gratitude teaches us to appreciate both the rainbow and the storm. So we're hugely grateful. My experience at Holyrood House is when you're given a wonderful treasure, you always hit the storm. It's okay. Rainbow and storm, they go together. We just have to keep on the grace road, on the grace path. Grace unlocks the fullness of life. Gratitude, but you can say grace. Unlocks the fullness of life. It turns what we have into enough and more. It can turn a meal into a feast, a house into a home, a stranger into a friend. Now, some of us, the team, when we meet and talk about guests coming, who's coming this week, and so on, very aware. We've had a lot of people recently, since the COVID thing's been going on, a lot of new people who've come to us at a really very difficult time in their lives, their whole life thrown upside down. And of course, they're strangers to us, but we're all strangers to that person. And for a person to actually come across the threshold at Holyrood House at a very vulnerable time in their life, a big imposing house, and I don't know, someone like me or Carolyn or somebody opens the door, I mean, that's really difficult. And yet they do. And there's a trust that goes on between two strangers and then more strangers, and we become friends. There's a wonderful theology of friendship that goes on. And of course we often talk about the psychoanalyst Winnicott, who we often say, well, I'm not doing very well, we know our weaknesses at Holyrood House, but maybe we're just about good enough. We often say that to each other. I think we're just about good enough. And that's enough. That's what we need to be, good enough. It's good enough. Why? Because Winnicott wrote about the holding, being held, about the supportive environment. And the environment is key. And we are custodians now of the environment. But somehow we've got to catch something new about it all. And weave it into being custodians of the whole thing. So gratitude unlocks the fullness of life that we're going to enjoy and offer to others. We often talk about wonder at Holyrood House, wonderment. I love the name wonderment. There are some fans sitting here of Miranda Hart who would be saying wonderment. Loves the actual words. So wonderment is important. So G.K. Chesterton wrote, "At the back of our brains, so to speak, there is a forgotten blaze or burst of astonishment at our own existence. The object of the artistic and spiritual life is to dig for this sunrise of wonder. This is our time to dig deep." Now, in this book, I couldn't remember whether it was actually Catherine Keller who wrote this or whether she was quoting someone, but anyway, it's from the book. The space of a shared time and the time of a shared space. We are sharing the earth. We are sharing it with the global community of which we've become much closer. We're all living with COVID right across the world, the earth. And this is the time of that shared space. And it has to be a shared time somehow. And, we got a little strap line, going global. Well, that was before COVID, so we pulled this out, going global. We've got to go global. and we have 3 international consultants as part of our Going Global, and of course on Zoom there's been people from other countries, so Helen and Oz have been doing Zoom work, and people from other countries have been part of that. We are going global. So this earth, this land, which is we are now custodians of, we are sharing. So we have to look at our little bit of land. It's not even an adopted world. It's us in our own corner. How do we use this well? How do we go forward with wonderment? How can we dig for this sunrise of wonder? It has to bring wonder into people's lives. So it's a new beginning. Now I love dandelion seed puffs. I just love them, and I would have loved to have brought enough in. They're beginning to go now. I would have liked us all to have one and blow it, but I think St Oswald's wouldn't like the seeds going everywhere. But you know, dandelion puffs, they're great, aren't they, for children? And you may remember when you were a child and used to blow them. So it's about playing, you know, what's the time? And it reminds us about time, and the Chronos time is very much the kind of time we're all caught up in it. Some of you missed a train. We have deadlines. I mean, how many of us? Oh my goodness. Oh, that should have been in last Friday and I still haven't even started it. Deadlines, all that stuff. Term time, appointments, anniversaries. Someone who won't be named who was coming today suddenly forgot that it was his wedding anniversary, so he thought it was over. So all those things. This is quantitative time, chronos. It's the law, really. It's part of law. Whereas the vision of kairos time is about grace. The vision of kairos time is quality. It's something about the quality of our time, this moment. And I've slipped in there that wonderful quote, now is the day of salvation. St Paul, I think, isn't it? Salvation means healing. Now is the time. Now is the time. Now is the moment. And Catherine Keller writes about the messianic now time, breaking through into her story, the story of this community. This is our threshold theology that we often talk about at Holy Rood House. Or as Mary Gray teaches us, it's our through theology. We push through the problems, we push through is it the Aunt Sally's that come up and you knock them down, you push through, and we have to get there. We can do it, we can't do it on our own, we can do it in community. It's our through theology. Now is the moment, and we're jolly well going to do our best to run with the moment, this new time. So, with the present situation of COVID, there's so much fear and anxiety, and as a small community locked down together, all different personalities, all living with anxiety or fear or concern, however we wanted to put it, all at different levels because we're all different people. So in this church today, we have all different kinds of levels of anxiety. In community, we have to go and run with that together. We have to keep listening to each other. It's not easy, we have to work hard at it. But we need community, not fear. So we don't think, oh, climate change, the whole world's going to end, you know, this is the end of the world, it says so in the book of Revelation, or the book of Daniel. No. We don't go down that path, because we cast our care upon God, for God cares for us, and we get on with the mission, because now is the time. And Keller quotes in her book, St Paul's Summons, the kairos arrests and suspends the chronos time. It's the kairos which is the thing that needs to come through the now moment. Now, we work a lot, of course, at Holy Rood House with trauma, our own personal traumas. and those of us who live and work at Holyrood House in any capacity, and alongside many people who come to us at major times of trauma, and communities that are in trauma as well. Well, we have now, don't we, an eco-trauma, the trauma of the earth. And so just as we might sit alongside maybe someone with counselling or pastoral conversation, or just at the table maybe, when we sit at the table again, just as we need to listen and giving whole attention to the story, however it's expressed, even if somebody's going off on one, you know, listen carefully, giving proper attention, discerning the depths of pain, making connections with justice, being in relation with that person and breathing in harmony with that person. So we must do the same with the earth. It's not less than the individuals. It is just as. It is just as important. It's breathing, it's full of living, you know, beings, it's alive and it's moving and it is traumatized, and we need to be alongside as a community and see how we can respond. But there's also lots of healed parts in it, healing us. And even anyone who, you know, we know about trauma, well, if we're working alongside someone in trauma, we ourselves are healed. It's not, again, a them and us. It's a relationship, as Carter Hayward says. It's the power in relation. It's this raw energy, Christ energy in my view. We're all affected. Relational mutuality, I've said about mutuality, it's essential for healing. It is the theology of the community and leads us to hope. Catherine Keller refers to hazardous hope. It is hazardous. It is hazardous. It's not all happy hope. We have to work with it. And we have to have passion for it. And passion can't be passionate unless it's compassionate. The two have to go together. Then we can find hope for ourselves and those that we care for. And so as I've said, the earth, our land, the earth which we tread, not just in this land, but you know, the earth's very small. The globe is very small now, and we share it and become part of something wider and learn from it. We learn how to be community from the earth. If you just take the ants and the bees, for example, you know, the ant colonies and the bee colonies, they teach us how to be community. And of course you have death, life, destruction, all the things that go with it, for survival, all those things, but they teach us about community. We're not separate from it. We're interconnected and dependent on each other. And Holyrood House, I believe, seeks to work towards an ethos of interconnectedness. That's what it's all about. Catherine Keller writes about a cosmos of interconnectivity. We share the planet with all sentient forms, and this leads to a theology of entanglement. A tangled web full of knots, lots of chaos, not tidy, but it's rich. We work through all the struggles together with the earth. So we're going to move now to a little video of Dr. Bayer Akomolafe, who is going to speak to us a little bit about a theology of entanglement. He's from Nigeria, and he speaks about a theology of the broken image of God.
The question of reconciliation is a difficult one, actually. I go about speaking about entanglement and the more than human, and how we're noticing these days that we're not as well put together as we think we are, that we are diffracted, that our edges are migrant, if you will, that we're constantly trafficking edges with ecologies around us, so that to treat the human as an isolated or isolatable object within an environment is to perpetuate some kind of imperialistic or colonizing notion. So the idea of reconciliation goes more than just putting things together. It's about noticing how things are already entangled with each other, how I am already part of the world's doings, how Justin's story and Tarot's story and Rebecca's story and Rich, especially Rich, his story is my story in a way that we haven't even begun to explore. I could say more about this idea of a theology of the moment. This might be a tad bit scandalous to say, but I'll say it anyway because I'm sure you did your research before inviting me to say stuff. That I've been very, very captured with this idea of the image of God. I grew up in a Christianized world. I grew up in the Christian south of Nigeria. I traveled with rich pastors and evangelized across the land, if you will, until a different idea started to invite me home to speak with me, if you will. But in an entangled universe, abandonment is not possible. So I'm still deeply called by this vocation to stay with these concepts that were part of my upbringing. And one of them is the image of God, that I am made in the image of God, is something that is part of my understanding. And yet the image the image is no longer the image these days. You see, things travel and things change. And we're learning that the image is not as static or as still as we understand it to be, that images are more than photographic, more than representations of an external reality. In some sense, images are programs themselves, right? There's actually some beautiful research by someone called Ingrid Holozow, where she speaks about the soft image, that images are not actually, like paintings of some external thing. They are, formulas themselves. Like if you peer within the image, they're constellations. And I'll invite everyone to, if you can go to YouTube, you might actually see a beautiful small clip of someone showing that you can actually hear sounds from pictures, that pictures can emit sounds and frequencies. So pictures are not flat or two-dimensional. They're multi-dimensional algorithms, more than just photographic paradigms. That suggests to me that if we speak about the image of God, we can no longer speak about that image in the same breath we used to speak about it, that the image is now diffracted. The image is now broken. The image is now spread out. The image is now, to use the words of Catherine Keller, the image is now meeting at the crossroads, if you will. So there is no container that can contain the image anymore. So what does that do to us? Or what does that recommend to us in these times that are inflected and affected by George Floyd, by the Anthropocene, by pandemic? What does it mean for us in times of trouble to be the image of God? I feel that we are now part of a political theology that involves animals more than human elements, the non-human, the inhuman, the yet to be human, in a radical, preposterous, poetic, yet to be decided, postponed ecology of becoming that cannot be contained in an easy ideological thing that we call this or the other. So we're talking about a theology of the broken image of God, which means in a deep sense. And if you run through the Bible, it's filled with brokenness, it's filled with cracks here, it's filled with fissures and fault lines. That idea that things are broken and we stay with the brokenness of things, more than just a patronizing thing of kneeling down as stewards to the world that is less than us, but for us to identify with the brokenness, as images, more than images, algorithms, becomings. I think that's the theology of reconciliation, a theology of entanglement, a theology of meeting myself in you and allowing you to meet myself, or allowing you to meet whatever entanglement.
So one of the things that Catherine Keller writes about is being folded into one another. Now, we often talk about Julian of Norwich, who wrote all those centuries ago about being enfolded in love. Well, we've moved in this thinking about being folded in to one another. The coinciding of opposites expressed by an old negative theology that give us pause, and then in the gateway of that pause, open a third way in entangled difference. It's really what has just been spoken about. Decisions then are not avoided, but deepen. They take place not out of nothingness, but amidst the chaos. Nothing's neat. We're not talking about all being neat and, you know, lovely National Trust looking garden, anything like that. You know, we just have to think outside of the box as how do we use this land of which we are custodians. We are folded into one another, members one of another, as all things become enfolded, and I love this, in a boundless embodiment. It reminds me of Gillian Rose's work about edgeless love, boundless. So in the kairos of our moment, we may assemble anew, right in the face of crisis. We are in crisis. The world is in crisis. So many crises is in the crises. So we're right in the face of it. We may only be a little thing, Holy Rood House, stuck in thirst, but actually we have a wonderful opportunity to be prophetic. We have to be prophetic. Otherwise, we might as well go home. It isn't just about sticking plasters on people and you know, checking out that we've got a bit of wildness in the garden or something like this. We have a wonderful opportunity which we need to respond to. So the climate crisis is often spoken of in Keller's work about an apocalypse. Now, of course, the apocalypse, people think of the Book of Revelation, Book of Daniel, and so on, the end of the world, which leads to fear, destruction, or, well, yippee, I'll be all right, because I'm one of the chosen ones, the rest can go to hell. We're not into that. That's not where we are. And apocalypse means revelation, uncovering, revealing something. And Catherine Keller writes, hope lives if it enlivens rather than deceives, not in predictions of end things, I like this, but on the vibrating edge, a precarious present becoming, not a flight from, but a struggle through. And there's Mary Gray, through theology. And Keller writes, we climb across into another possibility, which may be known only as not yet known. There's something wonderful about that which we don't know. The confusion of hope with certainty is certain to disappoint. No good us saying, oh well, God will make it all right. A certainty. That's not our theology at Holy Rood House. It's a process. And we have to take care we don't confuse hope with certainty. The kairos of present possibility always leads to action. We're going to just have a couple of minutes listening.
I think it's a really important question. I wrote a book about the apocalypse way back in the last millennium, and I was concerned to discourage people from the deterministic view and its kind of negative and often very sexist vision of a final destruction of everything planetary. And then the new creation, Daddy makes us a new one. I realized, of course, that the apocalypse had very positive motivations for social justice working in it as well. But now I feel like we have to come back to the book again afresh, because the question does arise with the the hurricanes and the floods and the droughts and the rising famines, the earthquakes, the huge fires, all of which were happening in the United States just a couple of weeks ago, about what is this? Is this actually the apocalypse? And it's important, I think, for Christians to say very carefully here, yes, but not in the sense of a predestined doom, but in the original sense of the word. Apokalypso, disclosure, that we are being shown by our own actions and their consequences, that we are responsible for the well-being of our whole species amidst all the other species and the life of this planet. It is not too late, but as Martin Luther King did say in relation to the Vietnam War in the late 60s, there is such a thing as too late. And so he called for the fierce urgency of now. And I think that's what the apocalypse is calling us to right now.
So Kelly Brown Douglas is an African-American Episcopal priest. She's a womanist theologian, and part of what she's written, Now Time, is a time pregnant with infinite possibilities for new life. And so Keller challenges us, what on earth is the matter with us? So she brings in, as she did then, the issues of justice. And we have prayers for justice and peace, don't we, every week? Healing is always to do with justice. They go together. And that's been part of our call at Holy Rood House. Sexuality, migration, economics, race, all the things we're dealing with at the moment, they all come into that same space, multiple interhuman crises. And Holy Rood is holistic. And at this stage, we are going to reassess and gather our energy to take healing and justice forward. Now, on Thursday, we're going to do some circle dancing. And one, I don't know whether she'll do this, but Sue will do this one. But I love the circle dance where you all go around and you go forward together, and then you take 2 or 3 steps back, stop, gather your energy, and then go forward, boom! And it's a lovely dance. And it's kind of, that's what we've got to do. I think we're at that place at Holy Rood. Let's gather our energy. Keller writes about the speeding shuttle of Kairos. Can you imagine, at the loom, at the moment of crisis, we might together take risks that matter. Across the loom of critical difference, we might release the speeding shuttle of Kairos into actualization. And she writes about the grace of the moment. We can participate in the evolutions or revolutions of our shared togetherness. We might make the difference, and she adds, not all the difference, but we might make, for Holy Rood House, we need to make a little difference, and that can change the world. This is what we do in our small corner. So we take a step forward in our response in a hopeful way. Now, hope is not about optimism. I tend to be a bit of an optimistic person, and fortunately being in community, I'm pulled back a bit and say, hang on a minute, you're quite right too. But hope isn't about optimism, it's the embrace of possibility tucked in this very present. Every possibility is a lurch into a future present. I love that idea. It's not optimism. We're not saying all will be well. We're not even going with all should be well, all manner of things should be well. We just have to be careful of that, because actually we have to live with, and that's what we're going to look at just before we finish now. So the next one is about staying with, living with, remaining with. The lovely thing that we sing at Easter, stay with me, remain here with me, watch and pray. Words attributed to Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. And Catherine Keller says, we become, with or not at all, in our non-human entanglements. We cannot determine where our limit lies, the margin, very important word, between what climate change has already determined and what we may still regather, regroup and reassemble in the earth. There's a margin. It's a liminal space. It's transitional time. Let's go for it. And the margin expands because of faith and hope. We stay with, we need to be truly present. Just as we are with someone who is in trauma, we are with them, we remain with them, we stay with them, we watch and pray. That's what it's all about with the earth too. And so we need to develop rituals for blessing, for mourning, for lament, for remaining, because we have to name the unspeakable. We don't do it, it's scary. But in community, maybe we can, because if we name it, we can know a little of what we're doing, and it'll just lead us to the next mystery, because the questions are always far more important than the answers. So I've just added this little bit about witness from Flora Keshkajian. I found this really helpful over the years. She writes about being with. She writes about witness. God with us, all right, the hope of glory, Emmanuel, God with us. Witness is our witness. That's our witness, not going into York and giving out tracts. Real witness is being with one another, being with the earth, remaining with alongside the trauma. So we're going to finish now with the last slide, you'll be pleased to hear. It's all about trust, hope and love. And there's a picture of our pulpit there with a dove on it. So Keller writes about the unknowing that trusts where it cannot know, hopes where it cannot predict, and loves where it cannot agree. And St. Paul writes about we hope for that which we cannot see. And the spirit of love, she writes, flows brooding over precarious nests of possibility. We discovered that there are starlings nesting at my new house in Berwick. So make the link here. Nests of possibility. They're always precarious, and particularly one of these nests, there's one in the front and one at the back. They look to me precarious, but yes, the spirit flows and broods. I'm just going to finish with this song. I'll sing it. It's actually called Enemy of Apathy, and that's the last line. I don't like the word enemy, but that's how it finishes. I'll just sing it. She sits like a bird, brooding on the waters, hovering on the chaos of the world's first day. She sighs and she sings, mothering creation, waiting to give birth to all the word will say. She wings over earth, resting where she wishes, lighting closer to